Okay, for me, I think the TYLEC's been a very positive experience, and it's definitely changed the way that I teach young learners. The courses that I've done in the past have been a lot more theoretical and focusing on teaching language, introducing new language points to adults, which is a completely different way of teaching. Whereas with young learners, it's not just about the language, it's the classroom management techniques that you use, the routines that you set up, the materials, how you engage them, and that language always needs to be presented in context, as that's the way that children learn. I think it's something that a lot of teachers don't take into account until they actually do a course like this that makes you stop and think about the language from the point of view of the learner. During the course we were told, we were given ideas about how to present language in a more contextualised way, by thinking of the lesson as a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. As we all know that children love storybooks, and the minute you bring out a big book, they're instantly engaged, and they seem to understand it with the pictures and words that maybe they've never seen before. They're able to follow the story. So presenting your lesson like that means that they're involved and they're actually motivated to learn and try to understand. And planning a lesson like that as a story, having a beginning where we set up a problem and then invite the learners to be involved in the resolution of the problem, means that there's so much more potential for them to increase their understanding and draw on their own experience as well of problems that have happened in their own lives. One of the lessons that I did was making a mini book for the students' pen pals in Korea. And the problem, well, it wasn't a problem, but the thing I needed help with was to make a mini book presenting information about Madrid so that we could send it to their pen pals. And once I showed them an example of this and how it was going to help their pen pals in Korea, they were really motivated to all get involved, and they weren't really concerned about what language point we were studying, even though that was integrated into the activity. They were more concerned with the end product, which was the resolution of the story. And so by doing that, I was able to introduce the language point, which was relative pronouns, so using which and where and who. And because it was all contextualised and because the students could see where the lesson was going, they were all able to achieve the task really well. Even the students that were usually quite weak, or perhaps never really engaged with the materials or the course book, having something that was a lot more personalised and that involved them as well, meant that they were so much more motivated to complete the task. Since completing the course, I do think a lot more about context, especially when introducing a new language point. It's not something that I would do every lesson, because obviously it does involve a lot of planning, and teachers don't have time to do that for every lesson. But when something is very important and I want to make sure that students have a good introduction to something new we're studying, then I will take the time and effort to make that into a full lesson. Recently I did a lesson introducing some and any, and using positive and negative forms, and I introduced it by talking about a party I was having and that I had to go shopping, and I showed them my shopping list and said that some of the things I'd bought and some I hadn't, and they needed to help me sort out what I needed to buy. And so we introduced things like, you've got some eggs but you haven't got any rice, so you need to buy rice, for example. And they understood that because it was in context, and they could talk about their own parties that they were having, and it just engaged them so much more. And because there was an end product at the end where we were organising this party together, all the students were able to contextualise the language, and I didn't need to explain meaning or show them tables with verb forms or positive and negative, because they understood that it was all implicit in what we were doing in class. So I would tell teachers that, that haven't tried this before, I would say that it's definitely worth a little bit of extra planning, because you will benefit as the teacher from seeing your class being completely engaged, to not having to struggle with getting them to gap fill exercises or getting angry with them because they've not done their homework correctly. I think it's definitely worth thinking about. And it's not so, I think at first I thought it was going to be quite difficult and I'd have to be very creative and come up with this elaborate story that I'd have to explain to the students. But actually thinking about real life situations, things that are familiar to them, so topics involving the family or problems that you have in your family, or with very young learners could be a trip to the zoo, or playing with your friends, computer games, anything that they can identify with. Just something very simple, a problem that maybe your sister was ill and she didn't do her homework, or how can we help her, something that happens to them in their everyday lives and that they're going to want to be involved in. And I think if teachers think about it from that point of view, rather than today we need to learn these 5 past simple verbs and how am I going to make them learn it, presenting it from the other way means that it just the young learners are able to remember them and associate it with that lesson. Remember that lesson we did on, remember that story I told you about, such and such. They can remember it and recall it a lot easier than if they had a list of words in their books. So I'd add that definitely this way of teaching grammar points and vocabulary also helps other issues that come up when teaching young learners, such as classroom management. When you have learners that are very engaged, classroom management problems do decrease, because they genuinely want to be involved in the lesson and in the activities. And I'd also say that it helps routines, because you can start your lesson off by reviewing the story or problem that they had in the previous lesson. So all of these are things that can be part of the lesson as a whole and the course as it goes along. And once students get used to that, I think that they know what to expect, and definitely you see improvement in their behaviour and in their attention as well.